everybody, welcome back. I'm really excited to talk to you about today's episode. I'm Dr. Amna Husain, board certified pediatrician, board certified lactation consultant, and mom. Today I want to actually talk to you guys about a day in the life of a pediatrician. This has been something you guys have asked me for so long. I get so many requests on TikTok, on Instagram about, can you take me through a day in the life of? I'll be really honest, a day in the life of a pediatrician for me is not going to be like the typical day in the life of another pediatrician, and that's for a couple of reasons. First of all, I own my own pediatric practice. So that means I'm my own boss. Yes, I get to control my own schedule and I get to control how many patients are seen and how my patients are booked. That also means I have a lot more administrative tasks that come to my plate. So I don't really just clock in, see a bunch of patients, write notes, clock out, and then go home. No, I actually do end up balancing quite a few different things throughout the day. And some of that might be tasks that, for example, patients might not be booked in the afternoon because that's admin time, or patients are not booked on, for example, a certain day because that day's busy and filled with tons of meetings. So it does vary from day to day slightly. And secondly, my practice is a concierge pediatric practice. Now, for many people, they may not be familiar with what that word means, and I'll be really honest, it's a pretty ill-defined word, but it often carries the definition of concierge medicine being billed outside of insurance companies. Let me explain. So oftentimes insurance companies, health insurance companies, are what we call third parties within medicine. So the first party would be, either you, the patient, the second party being the physician or the healthcare provider that you're choosing to see. The third party is the insurance company. So it's actually a really weird system, but you pay your insurance company and then you come to see the doctor, and then the doctor sees you, bills for appropriate, coding, what we call, so what we either diagnosed, what we recommend, what we prescribed, etc. And then we give that coding to the insurance company, and then your insurance company will then pay the doctor. And it's really simplified. It can be much more complicated. For example, the coding changes almost every year for physicians. Different codes mean different things amongst different specialties, just like insurance companies can be really confusing. So sometimes your deductibles can be really high, but your premiums are a lot lower. Some things are very inclusive. For example, Medicare, which is typically for elderly citizens, might be more inclusive of certain services. But for example, for me as a pediatrician, I don't bill Medicare very frequently. There are very rare instances where a child might be under a grandparent's care and then they are a dependent of the grandparent and you bill Medicare. So you can see it gets very confusing. Say all that to say some physicians like to remove themselves entirely from that model and instead just bill the patient directly. And this is not abnormal. This is actually how we used to practice medicine way back in the day. And I say way back in the day, but it was really just kind of in the 1900s before insurance companies came to really be. So for example, you need to see a doctor because you have a cold. Well, you would contact your doctor. The doctor would actually either see you in the office or maybe even do a home visit for you. And then you would just pay the doctor directly for their services. You actually do this with a lot of other things too. Your lawyer, if you ever see a lawyer, you pay the lawyer directly. If you buy a meal at a restaurant, you pay the restaurant directly. You don't pay a third party and then that third party pays the restaurant. That's not the way it really works in other fields. So I say all this to explain that concierge medicine carries that tone, concierge being you're able to cater to the patient. And the patient can actually choose this service for a couple of reasons. They maybe want more personalized care, they don't like their health insurance benefits, or some patients may not even have health insurance, which is just an entirely different issue altogether because, again, premiums can be very expensive. Some insurance companies are just not as inclusive. So there can be a lot of reasons why a patient chooses to go with a concierge style physician or go with a concierge style practice. My practice is concierge pediatric medicine, though. So that means that patients would pay me directly for the services that I render. Almost all of my families do have insurance, and I recommend that they do because insurance is there for when you need it. So for example, you go to the ER, you can rack up a huge bill. You do need to have insurance to possibly shield you from, multiple procedures, labs that might get done, even if you need to be admitted, for example, so you can max out how much you necessarily pay out of pocket, and then your insurance company can kind of help. That's typically how it should work, and I can assure you that very often it doesn't work that way. And there's so many unfortunate stories where it's almost feels like insurance companies have unfortunately picked profits over patients, and that's just not the way it should be. Now, this whole video is not about insurance companies, and I could rant about that forever, but it's not about that. But what I meant to say is this is one reason why my practice is laid out a little differently. Now, lastly, I do pretty much work part-time clinically in my practice. So that is to say that clinically, how many times I actually have like a stethoscope on, or I'm actually booking a patient and seeing a patient, is really part-time. So the full-time hour work week is typically 30 to 40 hours. I probably work, I would say, 50 hours at my business, 50 to 55, but not all of those hours are actually spent doing patient care. So a lot of that time is spent doing administrative tasks. So meetings, calls, maybe even just making sure my schedule is appropriately booked out for the week so that things aren't conflicting. And oftentimes some of that work might actually be done at home, and it might be done after hours when my daughter's asleep. That's kind of the life of a business owner. Again, sometimes you do end up blurring some of the lines and bringing work home. It's not great, but it does happen. So speaking of, let's talk about the hours. So my hours are what I set. So right now, I actually see patients. I can tell you my clinic's open 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Mondays. So that's kind of my later day. And then the remaining days, like Tuesday through Friday, it's actually 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. So those are the hours that patients are typically booked between, especially new patients. If it's an established patient, and I know this family very well, I know they're not gonna potentially no-show or cancel last minute, then I'll even book them outside of those hours, just as long as I have someone at home with my daughter, right? All of my patients understand that I am a mother, and I do have a young one at home, and I am expecting, so I am balancing a couple of things, and I'm very upfront with them and let them know when I have availability and when I don't outside of those hours. Now, weekends, typically we are closed, but again, it's by appointment only, and my patients know how to get in touch with me. They also know that typically those appointments are reserved for emergencies. So again, I have to keep those boundaries for my sanity. I'll be really honest, I have come a long way when it comes to setting these boundaries. When I first started this practice, it was now almost 2 years ago, but when I first started this practice, actually maybe even more than 2 years ago, I used to really struggle, and I wanted to say yes to everything and to every patient. And I can't do that, because when I say yes to them, I'm saying no to some other aspect of my life, and it has to feel good. And if I carry that guilt with me, that guilt isn't a great feeling. So I can't carry that kind of guilt anymore, and so I need to create boundaries. We should all create some kind of boundaries, I think, so that we can have some work-life balance, right? Even that busy pediatrician who sees 30 patients in a day and then comes home, if she's bringing home her notes with her, is she really trying to keep work at work and keep home at home? No, it kind of follows you. And so I want to create some kind of boundaries so that I'm not always pouring from my own cup, and then I don't have enough to basically give for my daughter, my husband, or myself. So in many ways, creating those boundaries and having office hours helps not only me, but I think it helps my patients, because I'm a better, happier doctor. So I usually get in 8 to 8:30. It really depends on when I have a morning patient. And then it's usually scrubs if I have a patient, or non-scrubs if I don't. So masks on because we're in the building. I'll be honest, some days when I have non-clinical work, I may try to work from home. I still have my daughter's nanny come because, it's not possible for me to operate in front of a laptop with my daughter. I don't really like to do that. But some days I do try to work from home if possible. So typically my day can start either at 8 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. So I told you sometimes patients are booked at 8 a.m. first thing in the morning, and I will arrive before the first patient, obviously then. But usually my day starts somewhere between 8 to 8:30 a.m. Typically I will wear scrubs if I'm seeing a patient, but if I'm not seeing patients, I do like to sometimes fit in my regular wardrobe. It's been hard with COVID. It was scrubs for a lot, but I like being able to fit in my regular wardrobe as well. I mean, I spent money. Those clothes were something I liked. I like being able to wear them and dress up occasionally to work. And then I'll be really honest, some days I just work from home if I can, if I get that luxury. So for example, today I am getting our baby gates reinstalled for baby number 2 because they've kind of taken a bit of a wear. The first one, they're about 3 years old now. So we're actually getting baby gates reinstalled. I wanted to be there for that. So I'm able to work from home, and in between, filming this YouTube video, I'm actually going to be doing a few more meetings, have been answering some patient phone calls. So that's one of the luxuries of sort of being able to own my own practice. On that note, patients know that they can't just walk in anytime they want. So we don't really have walk-in hours. All appointments are online, booking in advance with me so that we are on the same schedule when patients aren't stuck in a waiting room for a long period of time because they walked in and I was already seeing another patient for, potentially 45 minutes to an hour. Now, I'll be really honest, on the days that I do work from home, I still have my nanny come in. First of all, this is her job and she needs those hours, and I completely understand that. But secondly, for me, I cannot really multitask and be here for my business and be in the right mindset if I'm also potentially feeding Cheerios or trying to read to my daughter. And for me, as a mom, I hate having a laptop open if I can help it and in front of my daughter. I like her to be able to sort of see me fully engaged as her mom. She knows that I'm going to be working and she doesn't really bother me at all. She's with her nanny. She's very happy. But in general, that's the kind of help and support that I have, because I know many people have questions about sort of how I handle everything. I don't handle everything. I ask for help. I ask for support, and it definitely takes a village. So I'm in my office now. I'm alone. The door is closed, so my mask is off. But usually in the morning, I will either pre-chart. And so if I have an early morning patient, like go through their prior notes, that kind of thing, it usually doesn't take me very long because, again, all notes are written by me. All patients are seen only by me. So I remember their medical history. If there's any things that come in between, like consultation notes or anything, I've already seen them. So there's really not too much for me to do. Sometimes I prepare the room too. So if I don't have an early morning patient, this is the time that I might be going through my emails. So, clicking, opening, replying, reading a link someone sent me. Usually when I do that, you guys will know because I'll start sharing interesting journals and articles on my Instagram and commenting on those. It looks like on my schedule today, there is a well check and a sick visit. I know that seems like it's not a lot, but I've told you before that I kind of try to keep my clinical work part-time because managing the business is also a part-time job for me as well. And so probably behind the scenes, I work more than 40 hours in a work week. Not to mention my visits are much longer with patients. So typically I keep my visits at least 30 minutes to an hour because I like to practice medicine the way I would like to feel as a patient. So that way we keep our appointments very unrushed. We keep them informative for parents. And I also feel like I get to connect with families now on a much more personal level. And so that's personally for me, like I try to take that into account when I'm booking appointments and make sure that, I give enough time to be able to adequately address and talk to a parent and answer any questions they have. So I can see multiple patients in a day. I can see up to 15 to 25 patients in a day, but I choose not to. And luckily, by keeping myself outside of insurance billing, I'm able to actually focus on the quality. So I'll explain, oftentimes when you are billing insurance companies, you actually have to see more patients to actually be able to bring in some kind of profit. It's really odd, but in medicine, actually, the only person generating income is the physician. So think about it. At Amazon, Jeff Bezos doesn't make money because he's the only one taking all the phone calls and doing all the orders. That's not the way it works, actually, at all. He actually has his support staff and customer service and everybody running all the technical happenings outside of Amazon helping to generate the income that's coming in, right? So if Amazon had terrible customer service, none of us would use it. And then from all the income that's generated from his support staff, he is able to not only pay himself, but also pay his overhead and pay the salaries of all of his staff. It's not the way it works in medicine. So actually the only income that's generated is by what the physician sees and how many patients the physician sees. So then from the money that might come in, we then pay our rent, we pay for example, any machinery or tools or equipment or anything that needs to be fixed or restocked in the office. You have to pay the salaries of any of your employees, and then you hopefully have a little bit of salary to take home for yourself. So I say all that to mention that that's why many typical practices have to see a certain volume in a day. My practice is laid out very differently, and I like it that way, but that also means I kind of do everything from A to Z. So I will not only just book the patient, but I bring the patient back, I do all the vital signs, I do the history, the physical exam, I prescribe all the medications. If there are vaccines that need to be given, I'm the one who actually gives the vaccines. In the future, I will think of bringing on help, but for now, this is what's working for me, and it's perfect for my concierge model. Hey guys, so you can see that I'm sporting my Pure Direct Pediatrics fleece. We're doing a casual kind of Friday here right now. But if it is a vaccine visit like today, I usually draw up and prepare the vaccines before ahead of time. I get the needles ready, etc. If I need to constitute a vaccine, I'll go ahead and do that. So that's what we're doing right now. And then I'm the one who actually gives the vaccines in the practice as well. I do get a lot of texts from patients. So it's actually through a HIPAA compliant app. It's free to them, but I do pay for it, and it's services to patients. So that way, if a patient wants to send me a picture of their daughter's diaper rash, that is a sensitive area, they don't have to feel wary of sending it through iPhone or iMessage or texting me. And it's actually a secure app that will encrypt it when it sends it to me, and it saves it, so nothing can really be deleted. It's almost a way of saving data to the patient's chart, actually. So the app's very convenient for me. I know it's really convenient for patients as well, but I can get a lot of texts that way for not just bookings, but rashes or concern for symptoms of congestion, cough, you name it. So oftentimes I can be doing a little bit of texting medicine and communication back and forth with patients during the day. Actually, this is also one of the many ways I get faxes as well. So e-faxes are actually sent through this app. And the great thing about it is if we, for example, do an x-ray of a child's lungs, the parent's definitely wanting to know about what the read says. And if it's, for example, reassuring, or it states that the child might have a pneumonia, well, I can actually share that read with the parent through text message. So they have it actually on their phone as well. So the app for me is actually super helpful, and I think patients so far have really enjoyed it, especially because today's parent is pretty much my age, and we do communicate a lot through text message. It's great. You can actually talk to your doctor in a secure way directly. Okay, so I just finished up a well check, and I'm sitting here, and I usually do my notes sometimes standing up. Depending on, how many notes I have to do. It usually doesn't take me long to do a note. I'm pretty efficient. I like to tell myself or think. So I either text to speech or I'll write down notes while I'm in the room with the patient. I do not usually bring my laptop and type. I just don't like that in terms of being personable. And then when I come out, the note doesn't usually take me very long at all. So personally, I don't write my notes in the room. I actually will take a piece of paper and jot down some notes, and I've always kind of done that. And again, my age, I can type really fast. I'm really efficient. I can actually type without looking. It's just something I find a bit impersonal. That being said, a lot of pediatricians take their notes out while they're in the room with the patient because they kind of have to, because they might be seeing so many patients. It speeds up efficiency. I've done it in the past when I did work for another practice and saw more patients. I can at least start my note, but for me in this model and my practice right now, I don't really bring my laptop or tablet or anything in, use technology. I'm pretty efficient otherwise afterward, and I can write my note pretty quickly, but in general, you'll find that my practice does things a little bit differently. Longer visits, no computer, you get to text with your doctor. Your doctor is the one giving you vaccines. But again, I created this practice to kind of be a little bit more of what I would have wanted as a parent.
So I will occasionally eat lunch at the office, especially if I have an afternoon patient, and take care of what work I need to do in the afternoon. Today I'm actually heading out because I have a home visit for a patient.
So yes, I do home visits and I love them. I think it's awesome because just like I mentioned earlier, we used to do home visits as physicians for our patients. And then unfortunately, with some red tape that insurance companies have added in, it becomes really hard to bill for a home visit. Of course, home visits still happen, right? Home health nurses still exist, especially for patients who are chronically ill, not just elderly patients, but even pediatric patients who might need home health services. But you need to really qualify for that. This is a service that you can have, for example, as a new parent and you have a newborn at home and the doctor can actually come to your house. Now I do have, again, some boundaries in place. So I'm not driving all over, I'm in New Jersey. I don't want to drive 1 hour up to the city or 1 hour downward south to Philly to see a patient because it can be really difficult. You're on the road and you might get texts from other patients who need to be seen. And then, like I mentioned, my checkups are typically about an hour long. So for that reason, I limit my driving radius to be 15 to 20 minutes outside of the practice and where the practice is located. So again, I try to do home visits only within office hours. So I'm not doing them late at night and I'm definitely not doing them in the middle of the night. And that's just for me. I have to maintain some kind of sanity. And patients know that. They can still get in touch with me overnight by phone if it's an emergency, but we don't do home visits in the middle of the night.
Okay, so home visit is done. I usually try to book my last patient because most of my visits are 1 hour long, around 2 p.m.-ish or so I can be done on time by 3 p.m. That's usually when my office closes. Of course, some patients are exceptions, with parents' work schedules. But typically, the biggest exception to that would be Mondays, which are my days that I usually work late.
So Mondays are typically the days, again, that I see patients a little later. And that's because I really balance with my husband's schedule. So he sees patients half days. He's a business owner as well. He owns his own practice. He's a dermatologist. So he also cuts off half days. On Mondays, he tries to do his administrative work. I usually bounce off with him so that he can be home in time when our daughter wakes up from her nap. So she has one of us here. And then I can book and see patients later in the afternoon that day. So I know that sounds like that schedule is ideal and it's amazing, and I'll agree that I love how I can control my own schedule, but the ugly part about it is some work does end up coming home with me, and I hate it. Sometimes I will be doing work after my daughter goes to sleep. I could be entering growth charts, I could be entering in vaccine records, I could be writing notes, I could be trying to respond to emails, and it's not perfect, and I think my husband and I both owning practices does help a little bit because we can both be accountable. Like, hey, let's make sure we get this both done in an hour so we can just hang out. It can also be really difficult as well, though, because we both can be each other's worst enemy and just kind of keep working and working because the work never ends, right? When you're a business owner, the work never ends. There's always something else you could do, something else you could work on ahead of time. So personally for me, I'm actively working on ways to lessen some of that busy work in between, but it's hard, right? It's really hard to sort of delegate things, especially when I think in medicine, you kind of get used to doing things a certain way and you might not want to give up control, especially because you feel like the way you do things are right. But as a business owner, you kind of have to delegate to be able to grow your business and sort of think forward.
So Asia's down, dinner's done. We usually watch the news together, Zane and I, at the end of the night. If we feel like it, sometimes we want to keep it a little light and we might not watch the news, or we might not watch any TV. Usually sometimes at the end of the night, if we have work to do, like computer work, we usually do that at this time because Asia's asleep. And usually we try to keep each other accountable and keep it like under an hour. Today I don't have too much work to do at all, but I do usually keep my planner in hand and sort of write down notes and plan my day for tomorrow.
So guys, that's kind of my day, beginning to end, sort of how some of it goes. Of course, there's some hiccups and things that change along the way. I might be doing maybe an interview for a news station, or maybe writing an article for a parenting outlet, something like that. Everything can sort of vary a little bit, but typically that's sort of how patients are seen, how they're booked, how my appointments are laid out, how we typically do home visits, and how I sort of juggle being a business owner and being a mom. Also married to a business owner, which again carries some of its headaches. I'm sure all of this is going to change and actually get a lot harder when this new baby comes. I've had a baby, I've been through the postpartum period, and it's a lot. It's overwhelming. And at that time, I was a resident, so I had maybe just a few weeks off, but then when I went back to, again, doing that sort of work that you go into work, you see patients super early, and then you come back, and sometimes work would come back with me, but not too often, because again, there was always a resident to sort of replace your shift. Now, it's going to be really different as already having a toddler and now having a baby and now having another baby, which was my practice to take care of. So I'm sure things will change. I will keep you guys up to date. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, because I do kind of share a little bit of my day-to-day life on there if this does interest you. If you have any other specific questions, you can definitely ask them below in the comments. Stay tuned for the next episode on Monday. Bye.